Hello and welcome to another Football Fashionistas podcast where we talk everything fashion and football, joined by myself, Ellie.
Hi.
Hayley.
Hello.
And Rihanna.
Hiya.
The topic of today's podcast is women in the sports journalism industry, and Rihanna and Ellie were lucky enough to get an interview with Megan Feringa about her role of being a freelance sports journalist. So without further ado, here is the interview.
So do you want to just introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself?
So my name is Megan Feringa. I'm a freelance sports journalist at the moment, writing for about anyone that'll let me write for them. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I called Cardiff, Wales home for a little over a year, and I think it still sort of has my heart. And I'm trying with all of my passion really to try to get back over there and pursue a sports journalism career.
So what got you into sports journalism?
It was Wales versus Hungary last October, which seems very close in time, I guess, to where I am now. So I never considered sports journalism a possibility, mostly because in the United States, women and sports journalism don't really go hand in hand. Doris Burke, who just recently this year had become the first woman to ever broadcast an NBA playoffs game, I think that's what it was. She was sort of like the pioneer for women in sports journalism here. So when I was going through journalism at my university here in the United States, I was looking at fashion, I was looking at culture. I mean, I was looking at things that normally get put in with women, and so I never considered sport. I loved sport growing up. I hated football, and you guys should know that from the get-go. I was absolutely crap at football. Like, I tried out for my under sevens team. I'm a triplet, so that's first things you need to know. Tried out for my under sevens team with my brother, and my brother was like Ronaldo out there. I mean, he was so natural, so gifted, so perfect. I fell on my face like 18 different times, and the coach went up to my dad and said, "Do not let her play on this team. She is so bad." So I ended up getting into basketball. I mean, football was the sport that spit me out. My brother and his friends would come over and they'd make me be the keeper. And so I would go into the net. I'd have oven mitts on. I'd wrap a pillow around my stomach, and they would just fire these absolute like bludgeon shots at me, and I'd be covered in bruises. I hated football. Football was like it was pain. And then I got to Wales, and I went to a Wales versus Hungary match. I was covering Welsh football fans for independence, just kind of getting into the thick of things. And we went on this march from Cardiff City, or no, we went from the march from what is it called, Womansby Street, that one where all the pubs are. So we went from there, walked all the way to the stadium, and oh my god, it was so much fun. I loved everything about it. Everyone was decked out in all Wales gear. It was so fantastic. The game was incredible. Rambo scored 2 goals. I mean, I've just never been that excited about anything. And you hear the anthem and you realize this is so much more than just, 11 guys on a pitch hitting around some massive plastic ball. Like, this is so much more than that. So I went home and I wrote a blog just kind of about why I'd fallen in love with Wales football. It sort of took a turn, went a little bit viral, and I was like, oh, this is fun. That's great. That was the end of it. That was the end of my sports journalism career. It was right there. I was like, a blog went viral. I'm done. And then a few months later, I just kind of been practicing a little bit with some journalism stuff. And these people from Welsh football fans called me up and they asked me to do an interview with them. I said, sure. So I went over there thinking that I was going to get a job. What they wanted to do was to interview me like I was going to be the interviewee. So we were on totally different wavelengths. And yeah, they wanted to interview me ahead of the America versus Wales match about being an American who liked Wales, all that sort of stuff. I ended up writing for them. And now I'm one of their freelance writers. And I love football, and I have taught myself the game in under a year. So that's a snippet of what my life has sort of been.
Wow, that is, as a Welsh football fan myself, I completely understand what you mean about the anthem, and it is so much more than just a game.
Yeah, like here in the States, I think we have so many options for sport. Like, you've got basketball, you've got NFL, you've got college football, you've got everything that you could want. So it's a little bit hard to sort of be that die-hard committed fan all the time. But then you get to Wales, and it's so different. Like, you've got football on the TV all the time. Everyone's talking about it. It's a livelihood. And over here, I don't think that's really the case with sports so much. So over there, it's definitely different. think that's kind of what dragged me into sport journalism to start with.
So you studied your master's in Cardiff.
Yeah, I didn't know where Cardiff was when I first applied for Cardiff. I thought it was in Switzerland, I'll be honest. I didn't know. I had no idea. But yeah, so like I said, I was a triplet, and my sister had applied to go to Cardiff for, I think, a Fulbright for architecture. And it was December, my senior year of my university, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had 2 jobs in New York, but I mean, I was gonna have to take out a loan to go there. I had some fashion blog thing I was working on. I hate fashion. Like, I'd much rather just wear a t-shirt and shorts. Like, I'm not a fashion girl. So yeah, my sister told me to apply to Cardiff. I said, great, I love Switzerland. So I applied, got in, found out very quickly it was not in Switzerland. It was definitely in the United Kingdom. And then my sister ended up not going. So I was by myself, and I flew out to Wales. I got to learn everything. I sat next to this man named Di on the plane. That was the first time I've ever understood the name Di. He had to spell it out for me, and I just thought it was fantastic. He's this really big man with bright red cherry hair and this adorable nose and these leg tattoos that just went up his entire, like, from ankle all the way up to thigh. And he loved Welsh folk music. So we talked for about the 12-hour flight. And he was amazing. And he's the one, he'd first mentioned Wales and sport, and he was talking about all these players, and he was talking about Gareth Bale. I kind of knew who Gareth Bale was. Like, I wasn't totally under a rock, but he was talking about someone named Chris Gunter. And I was like, I don't know who this is. Like, that's great. I don't know who you're talking about. And now it's gone full circle where, like, I've gotten to speak to him, and yeah, it's just kind of crazy. So I'd gone to Cardiff and went and got my master's there. I met a few Swansea fans. I mistakenly thought that I was a Swansea fan for a really long time because a coach of mine had gone to Swanee in the United States, but being a 12-year-old, I thought she said Swansea, and Swansea at the time were in the Premier League. So I was convinced that I was a Swansea fan for my whole life, and there was no tie to Swansea whatsoever. So I had just mistakenly done that. So now I'm a Swansea fan by default. Been to a few matches, and yes, I went there, but sports journalism was so not the thing that I was going to do really until probably February of this year. And now it's sort of my life. It's just completely consumed me.
So being new to the industry, what's it like being a female in the sporting industry?
It's tough. You get those first questions of why are you here, or you sort of get those looks like she possibly can't know what's going on, because when you do get into a lot of these press conferences and things like that, I'm sure you guys have seen it too, you usually are the only girl there. There's usually you and 1 or 2 other people, if that. If you're covering the women's game, there's a lot more females, but if you're covering anything to do with the men's game, it is usually a male dominated atmosphere. And that can get a little scary because you feel like you kind of have to prove yourself a little bit more. You have to kind of throw in facts and sort of insert yourself in this way. And that's definitely not my personality. I'm a much more conversational person. So that was, I think, really tough in the beginning. So I'm always on myself to know every single fact in detail about a player, which I guess in the end is probably better for me and you guys. Like, I'm sure that when you guys go into an interview, you are so rigorous in making sure that you know every single detail about what you're about to go into. And I think that gets us a little bit more prepared. I know that like just the other day I was interviewing what was her name? Esther Morgan. She's the Tottenham player who's just gotten called up for the Wales squad. And I'm going in through like Google page 8, trying to find everything I know about this girl, making sure I know everything, because that's just what you have to do when you're a female reporter. You have to make sure you've got every base covered. And so I've definitely noticed that. But at the same time, I've noticed people are a lot more inviting, and they are a lot more willing to have conversations with women in sport and make sure that they are being represented in the right way. And there's one of the guys, Rob Phillips. He's wonderful at his job, and whenever we're on Zooms together, anything, he's always like the first one to be like, Meg, how are you? Like, how's New Orleans? What's going on? And so people are so sweet. Ian Mitchellmore, he's another one. He's wonderful at what he does, but he's very, very cool about just making sure whoever it is that's on the Zoom is having a conversation with each other. And I think that's really great. And I think the sports journalism world is definitely opening up more doors for women And I think the people in the industry are doing that a little bit more. I think sometimes it's maybe the audience that can feel a little bit weird about it. And I mean, it's normal. I mean, I think change is something that tends to scare people, and football has usually been a male dominated place. There are those questions of, well, if she's never played the sport, what the heck does she know about this? And I think women are going to kind of change that perspective. I think it's time that we can say, no, you guys have kind of got it wrong. We're going to help you figure out that we are very capable of doing this job, and maybe even doing it better than some of the people that have done it before us.
I think because myself and Ellie are both football fans, and obviously we're studying sports journalism, there's only 3 girls on our course throughout the whole 3 years. So we can relate to how you feel. So that's why we kind of wanted to see what it was like professionally as well.
Yeah, I think professionally people are a little bit nicer just because, I mean, it's professional. But you're there because you're usually there on merit. But I mean, sometimes you definitely still get the oddball question of, oh, so do you know who this person is, or blah blah blah, like little things like that. And you're like, yes, I do know who it is. I've done my research, I've done my questions, and yeah. But at the same time, I think being a woman kind of gives you this different perspective of things, and maybe it tends to like not cloud your judgment as much. And I know some of the questions that I ask a lot of the guys and a lot of the girls tend to be a little bit different, and maybe that's one, because I'm American, two, I'm very new to the sport journalism world and I didn't necessarily get an education in it, but three, I think part of that is being a female. I think females tend to ask different questions, and it's fun to be kind of part of that pioneering group trying to break into it, you know.
So obviously, go on now.
I definitely agree. I feel like we have to prove ourselves, but then we do bring something different to the table as well.
I remember I was in the park during lockdown, oh God, so many months ago, because it was warm in Wales when that was happening. And this guy had asked me about Zlatan Ibrahimovic for some odd reason, of all the, because I was talking about Wales football and somehow that got brought up, and I was like, this is nothing to do with this, but okay. And I'd mentioned some stat and I was off by like 3 points, I think. Like I had said something about his goals or something ridiculous. And this guy just turns around so quickly and it was like, you do realize that this is blah, 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 and just went off this like very ranting tangent about how wrong I had been because I was like 3 points off the margin. I almost wanted to slap him because I was like, you two, like this man, this guy and his other friends have been just talking basic gibberish about football for an hour. And the moment that I had a slightly incorrect fact, it was just, let's pounce on Megan because she's a girl. And, you know, this is an excuse for us to be able to do it. So I think people need to be a little bit more aware of when they do pounce on a female, and they wouldn't do the same to a man. I mean, you see that with Alex Scott, you see that with a lot of different female pundits, but yeah, I think that's definitely something that needs to change. And that's just sort of a general consensus around the audience. So like, yeah, that's just sort of on them, and it'll come, but it is a little bit sad when that happens, and proving yourself just gets tiring at some points.
With all the blogs and lots of websites about, do you find the industry a competitive one?
Oh my God, yeah. Sometimes I look at all the different blogs and I'm like, how in the world am I ever gonna make it in this? Like, I love going down rabbit holes of blogs. Like, I think they're so much fun. Some days I'll just be like, okay, I'm just gonna go to find a different team and go find all their different blogs. So like Arsenal, for example, I mean, you can go down rabbit holes for days trying to find all the different bloggers about them, and some of them are fantastic. So yeah, I mean, it's really complicated. I tried doing a blog for a little bit and found that the best way for me to actually get my writing out there was to find someone who would give me a platform. So that's where Welsh football fans really did come in handy. And Alex and Lawrence and Dan, like, they're fantastic. So I've just sort of worked along with them, and we send emails back and forth. And now I kind of get to help them out with videos and things like that. But yeah, blogs can get really scary. I think it's important though, because I mean, a blog is what got me here in the first place. I just happened to write one, and you know, it led to me getting into the sports journalism career. So I think it's still really, really important to have it. But at the same time, what you can do is you can go on to different places like Sporting Fair. It's really great. Instead of just putting it up on your own blog, you can kind of put it up on there. It looks a little bit more professional. I think like 500, 600 people usually get to read it that normally wouldn't read it anyway. And then you can share it on your own platforms, and that sort of spreads it. So it's still a blog, but it's kind of in a place that gives you a better platform to showcase it. But I mean, yeah, the blogs are scary, but I mean, they've always been that way, unless you're, what's that awful movie about whatever chick go never mind, it's some movie my mom and I were watching the other day, but she had some blog about her following some cookbook, and it went viral. But that happens in movies, like it's very rare a blog's ever going to just suddenly take off, unless you get Ryan Reynolds to retweet your thing about Wrexham. So who knows?
True.
Has there been any significant challenges that you've had to overcome?
Probably learning football, to be honest. Like over lockdown, I would get on my computer probably about 8 a.m. and I just studied. Like I honestly just had to completely study the game and try to write down facts. I have notebooks full of different tactics that different coaches have used, and trying to understand the game, trying to like get history lessons, because I think as a girl particularly, like understanding all the history that some of these teams have and being able to just sort of like snap out of it and get it out, that's really important. Because I know for a fact, like my brother, I mean, he could tell you exactly who was on the World Cup Germany team 15 years ago. Like he knows it by heart, whereas I sort of have to make sure I'm on my game. So that's probably been my most difficult thing, is making sure I know the stuff that happened 20 years ago when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, and it's still relevant today, because a lot of stuff's happened in the last 30 years that is super, super important, that you do need to know. You can't just hop into this and think, okay, well, if I know what's happened in the last 5 years, it's fine, because the last 15 years is what sort of built the foundation where we're at. So that to me has probably been the biggest struggle. The other biggest struggle is just finding a job. I mean, I've been denied from so many different job places. It's unbelievable. Most of it saying, this is great, we like the way you write, we like the way you present yourself, but you don't have enough experience. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. So I think you guys doing sports journalism as your undergrad or as your degree, you're gonna be like 3 steps into the door, versus a lot of these people who, like me, just blogged and sort of did it for fun. So that's going to be really, really important for you guys. But yeah, just keeping at it, I think, is probably the hardest part, because you wake up, you check your email, and 14 people have told you no. It's not exactly the best way to wake up on a Monday, but you just got to keep going at it, and it makes it worth it in the end. And yeah, I think the other hardest challenge I ever had was I interviewed George Ratcliffe one time, and he wasn't exactly very forthcoming and very nice. So and it was one of my first interviews ever, and I was like, oh my God, like he doesn't like me. What am I gonna do? This was awful. Like I didn't get any good quotes. But then I interviewed, the next person. It was fine. So just sort of jumping over those little barriers that get in your way, and reminding yourself that you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it because you like it and you love it, and you're doing it because you can and you are good at it. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge of them all.
For people like myself and Ellie, do you have any tips or advice for aspiring sports journalists?
Yeah, just write and consume as much sports journalism as you can. Like I love The Athletic. The Athletic is probably my favorite place to get sports stories. Stuart James is an absolute like mastermind of masterpieces, is what I was trying to say. But he's fantastic. I mean, he's wonderful. And so I think consuming as much sports journalism you can, constantly writing and getting better at whatever you're doing, watching as much as you can, but also just talking with people and making sure that whatever you're doing it because you want to get the story that's underneath it. Like I think so much of sport journalism now can get down to just kind of boring reporting, and here's this match preview, here's this, here's that. Kind of finding a niche that people really do want to get into. I think that's probably my best tip, because there's so much clutter out there with media right now, and you're trying, and like you guys said, with the bloggers and all that kind of stuff, it's really competitive. So finding what makes your coverage different and finding an audience that likes it, I think that would be my biggest tip. How you do that and what your niche is, I have no idea, because I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But that would be my tip. So yeah, that's what I've got for you.
This is just a personal question for me, but who's your favourite Welsh player?
Okay, wait. So playing now or like up and coming? So who, like in the starting 11, or what are we thinking?
Whatever, whoever.
Oh, God. Okay. Okay, right now, favorite player is Joe Roden. I absolutely adore Joe Roden. I think he's wonderful. The fact that he pinned up that letter that said that he wasn't going to make it on the Wales squad over his bed and said, I'm going to make it, and then did. Fantastic. I think that's wonderful. All of his tattoos, his brother Sam. I mean, I love them. I love Joe. Massive Tottenham fan too. So that sort of fell into that. And then my second favorite, I think right now is Luke Jepcott. He plays for Plymouth, and he's an under 21s player coming up. He's just scored, I think, like his 8th goal of the season. Last season, he hopped into Plymouth in January. He scored 7 goals in 14 appearances. Like, this boy is incredible. But he's also one of the nicest people that you're ever going to talk to. And so over Zoom, he's always giggling, always smiling, very, very polite. So yeah, the up and coming Wales youngsters are really something special. And I think that, I mean, just judging from what people love about the Wales squad currently, that is going to be a really, really fun group for people to get to know. And yeah.
No, it's been so lovely to speak to you, honestly. You've been amazing.
Send me a link to whatever you guys do with this, and I'll share it. And yeah.
Thank you so much.
So much.
Bye.
Thank you.